welcome to Ice Cream You Scream. We're your weekly screw. We're your weekly screw.
I don't know why that's so funny.
I don't either what it is. We're your weekly scroop. Anyway. Hi. Welcome to Ice Cream You Scream, your weekly scoop of the most chilling histories, mysteries, and true crime. My name is Kathryn.
My name is Gina.
Every month we choose a new topic, and hello, it's a new month. That means
Welcome.
New topic and new ice cream flavor. And we eat ice cream while we talk about the topic. This month's flavor topic is poison. And our ice cream flavor is Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia, hashtag not sponsored but wannabe, topped with pretzels. And the reason for that, I'm going to defer to you, Gina, because I don't, was it arsenic?
Well, you see, Kathryn, it's actually ammonia. And it's sour and salty, allegedly. I have not eaten. I don't know. I haven't consumed any ammonia that I know of, but
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever tasted ammonia.
I don't think so.
But yes, that is allegedly I want to say similar taste. I don't think ammonia tastes like Cherry Garcia, but it has a salty and sour taste. So that's what we're doing. So go ahead and grab a spoon and let's dig in.
So my ice cream surprise this week is twofold.
Tell me.
Number one, I got an ice cream maker for Christmas. So I made my own Cherry Garcia because I couldn't find it. I looked at three stores and nowhere had it. So I made it.
I wondered if you had it over there. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some Ben & Jerry's flavors, but we have fish food and I don't know, some other random ones. But I did get so excited about making the ice cream that I completely forgot about the pretzel bit until you said it just now. So
well, that makes me feel better because no, that's okay. I don't know if you can see it, but this one little bit is the only pretzel bit I put in mine because I love Cherry Garcia. So I didn't want to mess with the flavor too much.
That's not even a whole pretzel.
No, it's literally, I ate the rest of the pretzel and then put a little piece in the ice cream.
Oh, that's so funny.
Because I like salty and sweet, and maybe I'll do it more in a future episode, but I love Cherry Garcia. So is it Cherry Garcia or Cherry Garcia? I think it's just Cherry Garcia, but I've always called it Cherry Garcia in my head. I think it is. I'm just accidentally not saying it right, so I apologize. Wait, is Cherry Garcia like Jerry Garcia?
Is that why it's called that?
Is that why it's called Cherry Garcia?
That'd be pretty fucking cool if it was.
I think it might be. Should we Google this real quick? Hold on, stand by. Okay, well, it auto-filled for me. I said, is Cherry Gar, and it auto-filled Cia named after Jerry Garcia, and it is. So I think we should clarify with people, we're not huge jam band fans because so far we've done a Fish reference and a Grateful Dead reference. We're not a fan, but I don't want people to start thinking that's a theme of this podcast because that's actually just an accident. They just have great flavors.
Kathryn, I got a text from you at 10:45 p.m. a few nights ago saying that you had a palm reading, and I need you to tell me about it.
Okay. The note is titled Palm Reading, parentheses, tell Gina. Okay.
Love that.
Okay, I'll tell you a couple fun ones. So one thing, I thought this was so funny because I've put very little thought into this ever, but one of the things she said was that I should go to Japan, which I think is so funny because it's never been on my list until a year ago. Phil mentioned it, that he wanted to go. And ever since he and I were talking about it one time, I've grown to be obsessed with the thought of all of us, the four of us. I know we've talked about it. Yes. The four of us going to Japan. I have a Pinterest ready. I have all this stuff ready. And it's of all the places I want to go, it's the newest one and also my biggest obsession.
Yay!
So for her to land on Japan specifically, it was kind of it was fun. I was like, oh my God, okay, well, cool. Then yeah, sure.
We'll go to Japan.
I don't know.
I wonder what's going to happen in Japan. Nowhere.
I know. I thought that was so fun. But she kind of just came in hot. She usually when you get a palm reading, they'll give you like a little intro and do like a general reading and blah, 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 blah. She just is like, all right, like roll your shoulders and like flop your hands down. And I do that. And she was basically like, all right, you should go to Japan. Like, it wasn't that dramatic, but it kind of felt like that. I've gotten my palm read and I've gotten a lot of different types of readings in my life. And this was the most like, all right, let's go. And she did go into, she would take a look and then she'd give me like an overview of like my personality and blah, blah, blah. It was very spot on. But some of them, I always like to see if I can like debunk what they're saying. That is one thing that I have always been very skeptical about, is like getting psychic readings or any type of reading. And so one of the things that she said very confidently was that I hate bureaucracy. And I was like, definitely do, yes. But also, I'm in a metaphysical shop in like the middle of the week right now. So like, that's a very good guess. Like, you know what I mean? But then I can't say more. She went into detail about very specific things. And I was like, oh, holy shit. Okay. Yes, that's legit. Okay. So the one that I really want to talk about on the podcast, for those who don't know, I went to school for writing. I've always been very passionate about writing. It's what I do for work. It's like my number one favorite thing that I've always loved doing. One of the first things she said was, do you enjoy writing? Like, she straight out said, do you enjoy writing? And I was like, yes, I do. She was like, but you feel like you haven't really been doing it as much as you want to, right? And I said, no, I've been very busy the last, several years. I've been wanting to get back into it recently. And I didn't tell her this part, but just between all of us, I've been like intentionally trying to write more, just in general. Like, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a story or just like research for stories that we do here. I've been trying to be more intentional about it. And she said, okay, you definitely need to lean into that. There's a lot of growth there. And like, if you keep doing that, you're going to like see a lot of success with the writing. And then she pauses and kind of like looks. She was like looking into the ether, and she comes back to me, and she was like, writing's great, but have you ever considered doing more with like a speaking role?
Shut up.
I was like, oh no, I don't know. I tried to play cool. She was like, yeah, I think that you can use your writing to kind of branch out into more of like, think like speaking, public speaking, storytelling. She literally says storytelling. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll think about that. Meanwhile, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, are we about to bust out big time with this podcast? Yeah, I love that. It was so fun just like watching her kind of like, it looked like she was kind of having a conversation with herself, which I loved. I was like, oh my God, this is like how I look when I'm just trying to like work through things emotionally. And you're sitting here like doing this, giving me like a palm reading. So she talked a little bit about that. She basically told me that cinnamon was my familiar, which like I'm obsessed with.
I believe it.
I've been talking about this for so long at this point. I'm trying to like kind of speed through these. She didn't explicitly say cinnamon, but she said I had an animal that relied on me emotionally very much. And I was like, oh, that's cinnamon.
Yeah, it's cinnamon.
And the other thing, I want to say one more thing. The thing about the animals kind of freaked me out a little bit because she was talking about it, and it got to the point where she was going real deep with this animal thing, and she sort of started to make it seem like, I was like, okay, is Cinnamon gonna like eat my face? Like, how obsessed is she with me? like, and right when I literally started thinking that, and right when I said that, she said something like, I don't mean to make it sound like it's spooky or anything. And like, I literally go, and she was like, no, it's not scary. And I was like, so I have a dog named Spooky. And she was like, oh, do you have another animal? And I was like, yeah, Cinnamon. And she was like, okay, so I didn't mean this before, but I do literally mean I don't think it's spooky. It's the other one. And I was like, she literally got it right without meaning to, because she meant like, I don't mean to scare you.
That's
but she
crazy.
And she like literally said the sentence, it's not spooky. So I was like, shit. So is it literally not, or is it him? Like, which animal is it? But in her description of it, it's definitely Cinnamon. Spooky Spooky loves me, but he would be fine without me. Cinnamon would not. Like, she would be very not okay if anything happened to me.
That's wild.
So I thought that was very funny. Like, she could have said anything. Anyway, so I don't think I said this, but for people in the area, I got my palm read at what was formerly known as Altered State of Mind in Bayview in Milwaukee. They recently did a little rebrand, and they are now called Alter. Highly recommend. I've been going to that store for years. I really love it. Nothing has really changed other than the name, and you can now book online, and their website's really easy to navigate, and just it's so much easier. I really love it.
I don't think I ever went there when I was in
Milwaukee. God, I love
Milwaukee.
that place. I, at this point, will have posted something on social about it, so you can see if you go to our Instagram or TikTok or whatever social, you can see what I got on there. I got some herbs, some candles, stuff like that. So it's cool. Definitely recommend. Not sponsored. I just really like that place. I'm not going to say how much it cost because I don't remember, but it was reasonable. Like, I've definitely
no one's business.
Yeah. She did mention money. She did mention things with money that I'm not going to share. We're going to be rich. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. She didn't say that. She didn't say that.
It's okay. I'm saying that.
I mean, we totally are. She doesn't have to tell us that. We already know. Well, we will if you guys will rate and review us and continue listening to us. So in the spirit of that, enough about me. I want to hear what you have to say to get us kicked off with this poison situation.
All right. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this without giggling. I'm in a fucking mood, and I haven't read these notes in 3 days. So you get what you get.
Cool. I'm here. I'm rooting for you.
All right. Imagine, if you will, Kathryn, being a woman in 17th century Italy. Before you are 3 paths. Option 1, you could get married. Usually an arranged marriage for wealth or alliances. Your husband would probably be abusive in some way, but you would be provided for. So that's something. Option 2 is you could stay single and become a sex worker for your money. That way you do get your own cash, but you would become something of a pariah. You would still have limited legal freedom, yada, yada. Option 3, you could become a widow, which would let you be financially independent, choose whether or not to remarry, and you could even carry on your husband's business if you wanted to. And while this decision would likely be made for you, if you did get to pick, you would probably want to become a widow. But for that to happen, you first needed to marry someone. The problem is when you get married, you literally become that guy's property. That's how it worked back then. Surprising to no one, this means that abusive marriages were absolutely rampant in 17th century Italy. And with no option to ask for a divorce, you might look for a more creative solution. And if you start asking around, one of your friends might introduce you to a woman who could help. All it would take would be a few drops of lethal liquid in your husband's food. Today, I'm going to be talking about the legendary poisoner Giulia Tofana and her weapon of choice, Aqua Tofana. And I'm going to say right now, right at the top, almost everything we know about Giulia Tofana is 100% up for debate. So I'll tell you the most common stories. As with all things, take it with a grain of salt or several. All right, that's out of the way. So,
the disclaimer.
So like I said, there's not a whole lot that we know for sure about Giulia Tofana, but there are a few things that we're pretty confident about. We're pretty sure Giulia was born in Palermo and that her real last name was actually Mangiardi. Historians believe that she actually rejected the last name Mangiardi in favor of her mother's last name, which was Tofana, which I think is pretty badass. It was also pretty common at the time. Like, it wasn't unheard of, but very cool.
Okay. Yeah. When I was little, I wanted to do that because my mom's last name is my middle name.
I love that.
And I mean, there's literally no reason to change it. I love my name. But like when I was little, I used to pretend that my last name was a hyphenated version of the two of them.
When I was little, I used to tell everyone my name was Christina.
We talked about this. I told people in first grade my name was Caitlin because I was new to school and this girl named Caitlin was talking to me. And I was like, oh, that's my name too.
That's my name too.
To be clear, I went by Katie. So I was like, oh, Katie short for Caitlin. And it just like fell out of my mouth. I like did not mean to say it. I just
It
was
is
trying
too
to make
late.
friends.
Then you can't take it back.
Yeah. I still lie about stuff to this day. Before I had a regular Starbucks that I go to, just for convenience, I used to tell people, like the baristas, that my name was Vivian. Don't know why. I just like that name. Why not?
Oh, I
You know?
could see you as a Viv.
Yeah, thanks. Me too. That's a good name. Anyway.
Back to our girl, Giulia. So, not 100% sure whether she was born in the upper or lower class, but regardless, she grew up in a time period where women were, to say the least, extremely limited in terms of freedom and social mobility. They were second-class citizens who were expected to obey their fathers and husbands at all times. They were seen as property to be traded for alliances, social standing, or wealth. They had no political rights, limited access to education. And yeah, sure, there had been outliers like Lucrezia Borgia, but the vast majority of women weren't given even a fraction of the opportunities she had. It's like Nepo baby shit, and we're talking about the real world. So, when Giulia was coming of age, fear and desperation were a part of womanhood, just like they are today, but they had next to no recourse for escape, legal or otherwise. However, that did not mean that women, as a social class, were helpless. Giulia came from a line of women dedicated to ending this feeling of entrapment by supplying the women of Palermo with the poison necessary to make them become a widow.
Oh my.
Yeah. Her relationship with these women wasn't one of blood. It was one of choice, kind of like a family you choose situation. Before Giulia became the head of the poisoning crew, there were two other women that came before her. One of them was named Francesca Lasarda, and the other was named Tofania d'Adamo. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering these pronunciations. I am trying so hard.
That sounded good. That sounded good to me.
Thank you. And when Giulia was kind of coming up in the business, these were the ladies who kind of ran the game. And Tofania, in particular, passed their knowledge down to Giulia. For a while, people actually thought that Tofania was Giulia's mom. That's a rumor that still kind of gets circulated today. Although I don't know. It's not so much a rumor as speculation because we don't know for sure. However, it's more likely that their relationship was like a mentor-mentee kind of thing. Okay. Regardless, Tofania was absolutely vital to what would become Giulia's future. Tofania taught her not only how to own and operate a business, but how to own and operate a poisoning business, the risks, the rewards. Most importantly, though, she taught her the recipes. The main recipe in question was an extremely effective and undetectable poison called Aqua Tofana. We will talk at length about that later. But back to Giulia. So by the time Giulia entered adulthood, she was a really important piece of the poisoning scene in Palermo. And she wasn't the only one. Like I mentioned, there were a band of women involved in this, which like from an like a gross like corporate operational perspective, I think makes a lot of sense. You need someone to source the materials. You need someone to actually make the poison. You need a front woman to sell it to people. You need someone to deliver it. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of different horrible things that need to happen. I'm picturing like an organization chart in my head and throwing up. Yeah. Eventually, though, the authorities started to wise up to what was going on in Palermo. And when the heat got too hot, Giulia and a couple of her friends from the crew left and they moved to Rome in 1624. And it's a good thing that they did because within the next decade, both of her mentors, Tofania and Francesca, would be executed for their crimes.
Oh, that's one of those like, I'm like gasping, but I'm also like, I know they were murdering people, so I shouldn't be like,
I know.
No. But
that feeling is going to last for this entire episode. So
yeah.
Get ready. Yeah. I do want to talk just briefly about how these women are executed because it will come back a little bit later and it's just interesting bits of history. So as with everything with this story, there are competing accounts about how Tofania and Francesca were executed, but there are only two real theories. The first theory is that they were hanged, drawn, and quartered. The second theory is that they were sewn into a canvas sack and thrown off the roof of a palace into the street.
What?
Yeah. I had
I've
never
never
heard of that
heard of
as an
that ever.
execution method. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask you to like talk more because I've never. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of different types of executions that I've never heard of throughout history.
And
I
this
feel
is
like
one of them.
I'm just like, yeah, I kind of just like got lost in my head there for a second because I like,
I know.
yeah, wow, that threw me. You could have said a lot of stuff and I would have been less surprised than I am.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay, this might be a dumb question, but does that type of execution have like a name? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
The word that my mind is giving me is defenestration, but that just means to throw someone out a window. So I don't think
How the
that's what
fuck
this
do you
was
know
called.
that? You know what
Because of
I
the
was thinking of?
defenestration of Prague. Have you heard of the defenestration of Prague?
No.
We have to talk. It's
No.
a guy
Okay.
got thrown out of a window in Prague. That's really all it is. But it's an interesting bit of history. I
You
recommend
know what
we
I
all
was
look it up.
You know what I think of on a regular basis, and I was just thinking about it last night, like as I was falling asleep? You have a really good vocabulary. I'm always impressed by like hearing
Oh
you
my
speak.
gosh.
I feel like
Indubitably.
between you and me, do you have like a word a day calendar?
I do. And I have a list of words on my
Do
phone
you
that I think are good
do it?
words. Yeah.
I used to, I'm sure I still do, but I don't like reference it anymore. I used to, but I need to be better at that because I'm just always very impressed by you.
I go
Not in
through
like a
phases with it.
demeaning way, not in like a, oh, I'm
No,
so
that's very
surprised that you're
nice.
smart, but like, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, okay, please continue. I feel like we're like never going to get to the end of this. We're both just like, la, la, la.
But we're bringing the same vibes today. I think that's good.
We
That's
are.
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's I'm grateful for that
Same
because
vibes.
I'm like, I would feel so bad if I was just sitting here like, what's it called when someone gets thrown in a sack?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a word for like getting sewn
Okay.
into a canvas sack and thrown off of a palace and into the street. I don't know.
Sorry. It's not funny. It's not funny at all. It's just that was a weird moment hearing like all of those things be one thing. That's why I'm getting like thrown away. Can I ask you one more question that's a little gross? When you say sewn into a sack, do you mean like her body was sewn into it or like the sack was sewn around her?
Oh, I
Because one
hope
has
it's the
like
sack was
horror
sewn around
movie,
her.
but yeah.
It better be
That's
the
what
sack was sewn around her.
That's what I initially thought, but then when I was thinking of it more, I was like, oh, this could be a little grosser. That's
I'm
giving
not sure.
like weird horror movie vibes. The first one seems more logical, but I don't know.
And I'm sure it varied on a who was doing the sewing and who was getting sewn basis.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Please continue. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'll move on now. So Giulia moves to Rome, right? She gets the hell out of Dodge. But when she got there, she didn't try to settle down or cover up her past. Instead, she and her pals from the original poisoning crew started a new poisoning crew, this time with Giulia at the helm. And she was fucking smart about it. She took up shop as an apothecary as a front for what she was, actually doing with the poison.
Classic.
Right. But it was also a way to attract new customers at the same time and to like meet people who might be interested in her under the table services. But more importantly, and this piece I thought was so interesting, she didn't rely on her old accomplices alone to get her whole secret poison business off the ground again. Instead, she made a concerted effort to recruit new women who were from Rome because they understood not only the city, but the people who lived there and the way that the hierarchies work. And around this time-ish is when historical accounts start to mention that Giulia was being seen with a much younger woman named Girolama Spara. We think that Girolama was Giulia's daughter. We do not know for sure, but later Girolama would claim that she was Giulia's daughter. It could just be another mentor-mentee type of thing, but regardless, they had a close relationship. And Girolama was married to a wealthy guy from Florence, which meant that she brought kind of a layer of aristocratic, almost credibility to the operation, which would eventually help Giulia crack into the market of Roman wealth and power, the upper echelons of society. But Girolama wasn't the only member. Giulia's new gang included women from all sorts of different social backgrounds and classes, which helped Giulia to operate and sell in all different types of social circles. In fact, we even think that she had representatives for high and low class customers.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah. So like Girolamo would
Wow.
liaise with the upper
Mhm.
class and be kind of the face of the organization to them. And then there was another woman, Giovanna, who would interface with the more lower class.
That's smart. That's like
It's so
advanced
smart.
strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's marketing.
Yeah. That really is.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And Julia's crew, one of the things that made them successful when they were setting up their business is that they didn't just offer poison. They offered women help in a lot of different ways, all the way from telling a woman her fortune to helping her get an abortion to providing medicines and potions from the apothecary shop. It was kind of a full
Wow.
suite of services that they offered.
Oh
And
my
all of
gosh.
those activities helped Julia and her staff not only start to find regular and returning customers, but also suss out which ones might be trapped in unhappy marriages. So interesting.
Wow,
Thought it
this
was
is
fascinating.
interesting. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm familiar with her as like a legendary figure, but I don't think I ever knew exactly what she did. That's just like really interesting because there is a legend and lore about the witch and her apothecary or whatever. The reality of it and like the medicinal side of it and the care side of it
Mm-hmm.
as well. Like that's such an interesting and fraught I guess juxtaposition. I don't know what other word to use. Like,
It is. It's really, really
yeah.
interesting. It's the way that she crafted kind of the foundation of it in Rome was
Hmm.
so much fun to research and learn about.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, that transitions really well into the next part. So now that she has all of her accomplices and she has kind of the org chart figured out, the first real order of business was to start getting ingredients to make Aqua Tofana. They were
Okay.
successful in this, and this surprised me so much. According to an investigation in the 1650s, so like way later after this, like maybe 25 years after what we're talking about now, they wound up connecting Giulia's operation with a local priest, Father Girolamo, who worked at a church in the center of Rome. And Father Girolamo's brother just so happened to be an apothecary with access to the ingredients Giulia needed, including arsenic.
Oh.
Yeah. So I know it sounds weird, like a man in power, let alone a man in power in the holy city, helping the feminine underworld kill other men in power. But there is a reason for it, or at least we think there is a reason for it. So there's this historian named Lynn Wood. I'm so sorry if I butcher this. Molyneux? It's a French name. I apologize. And she says that the kind of feminine underworld in Rome around this time was really similar to the black market they had in Paris in the same century. So in Paris, just for comparison, certain priests and holy men would willingly participate in this quote underworld and activities like Julia's in return for access to items or ingredients that they believed could be used for potions and spells because belief in magic was still
Oh.
really prevalent at this time. So they were priests, but they were kind of dark magicians at the same time.
Okay. I thanks for that clarification because I was like, oh my god, why did they want things for spells? It's like, oh, okay, use your brain. This is absolutely a novel that I would devour. This
Right?
like is so interesting. Can we please pause on the phrase feminine underworld?
Thank you.
Like, hello. What the fuck?
Hello.
I want to be part of that. Are we part of
Me
that?
too. I think we can be. We just have
I
to
think
commit
we
one
are.
crime together.
Well, there we go. We're in.
We'll jaywalk together the next time I'm at home, and then we can.
We have absolutely committed crimes together. Are you kidding? It's okay. My parents know.
I don't think mine do.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. So these dark magician guys, we believe that Father Girolamo was something similar to that. And the fact that Julia
Okay.
didn't just poison people, she also provided other services, kind of helped him feel a little bit better about it. So great.
Yeah.
Julia has the staff, she has the supplier. Now she needs to manufacture. So let's talk about Aqua Tofana. Aqua Tofana is known as one of the most successful poisons in history, mainly because
Wow.
it was clear and flavorless and very slow acting, making it really easy to mix with food and next to impossible to detect. Now, when it comes to the recipe for Aqua Tofana, if you came here wanting to learn how to poison someone, I'm so sorry to disappoint you. We don't actually know the recipe for Aqua Tofana. We suspect that its operative ingredient was arsenic. We also think that belladonna and lead were involved as well. And we also believe that the process of making it heavily focused on activities that would mask any flavors that you might get from those ingredients. I think like arsenic is supposed to be a little bit bitter, lead tastes like lead, et cetera, et cetera. When it gets to the actual act of using Aqua Tofana to kill someone, one of the things that made it so successful is the level of control that it gave the poisoner. Depending on how much you used, the victim could die within a few days or it could take a few months. It really was all down to how much was given and how frequent the doses were. But normally the doses were given in 3. There are a few different kind of ways that people have told the story of how someone might have used Aqua Tofana. But what usually seems to wind up happening is this. So you would put some in a drink and give it to your husband. They would start to feel a little out of sorts, just like a bit weak maybe, but not bad enough to call a doctor, just a little under the weather. After the second dose, maybe a little while later, they'd become a bit weaker. They would start getting some stomach pains, maybe even start vomiting, like clearly sick at this point. So you would express concern, call in a doctor because you're such a devoted wife, and you would pledge to prepare your husband's meals yourself to make sure that he got back on his feet. And in doing so, you would administer the 3rd dose. The doctor would be flustered over this incurable disease, trying to treat it with no avail. And again, you, the dutiful wife, would help however you can by poisoning him more. But then your husband would eventually succumb and die, and you would act devastated. If anyone accused you of being involved, if they somehow suspected that you were poisoning him, you would demand an autopsy and an outrage, demanding that the doctor, discover what actually killed your husband. But because you used Aqua Tofana, the doctor would say there was no poison involved. And so it would be remembered that despite your best efforts and accusations against you, your husband died, leaving you a grieving, slandered widow. And who would sink so low as to question that? You know what I mean?
I do. I do know what you mean.
Aqua Tofana wasn't violent, and it wasn't immediate, but it was also very effective, which put it above other poisons that were available at the time. It was like the Rolls Royce of poisoning your husband, which is a horrible comparison.
Oh my God.
But
okay. Yeah.
Wow. It
It
was like the creme de la creme of I need to kill somebody with poison.
That's what you wanted and needed in order to get it done. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And to keep any prying husbands from finding the poison before it was ready to be used, Giulia, once again, was really smart about it. She disguised the poison as basically cosmetics.
Oh. Okay.
So she packaged it. It's so smart the way that she does it. And not to, laud her too much because she did kill tons and tons of people, or by her hand, tons and tons of people died. But just from a businesswoman perspective, I really admire some of her work. So I need to edit that out.
I mean, no, I think that is very much based on what I know of this story. That is very much the vibe surrounding it. This is like she's like the OG girl boss plus cosmetics. Cute. Love it. Here for it. Yeah.
So she would package it in these glass jars with a label that said Manna of St. Nicholas, which was a really popular oil at the time that women used for blemishes. It was like a zit oil, essentially.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So women would have it, with the rest of your makeup and cosmetics like you would today. And I don't know about you guys, but my partner has never once looked at all of the shit on my vanity. There's if you want to hide something from him, that's the first place you put it. It's a genius decision.
That is Phil is such the cliche when it comes to cosmetics and my purse. Like if I ask him to get something out of my purse, he will like get scared. like he'll like pick it up like, oh God.
Oh my
Like
God.
those are like the two places you don't mess with. Whatever your routine is, like whatever is your morning routine, whether that includes cosmetics, skincare, like whatever, and your secret bags. Like those are the things that you just do not go through.
And there's something about that transcending centuries that I really like.
Yeah. And cultures.
And
Like
cultures.
yeah, that's
Yay,
interesting.
women. So Giulia began plying her trade on Roman women of all classes, leading to a string of seemingly unconnected deaths. Not all of these deaths are documented, obviously, but there are stories and tales that Giulia's trade was connected with the deaths of over 600 people, including
Whoa.
members of the aristocracy like dukes and so on.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Damn. That's big.
Yeah. It is worth mentioning, actually, that hers was not the only active poisoning ring at this time. There were like lots of women all over the place who grouped together and decided to poison people.
That is so telling.
Yeah.
Says a lot.
Yeah. And from there, we don't really know a whole lot about Giulia's life beyond what I've already said. And even to the point where historians get really muddy when they're trying to find an exact year of death for Giulia. At some point, she did die. Surprise, surprise. And there are two stories about her death. Some historians, and the more popular theory, seems to be that she died in her sleep in 1651 at like a ripe old age, and no one suspected her of any wrongdoing. That's story number one. The second theory is that she was eventually found out and took sanctuary in a convent where she continued to actively poison people until she was again discovered and was executed by being thrown over the wall of the convent. Just like,
oh my God.
Yeah,
those
Francesca
are two very
Tofana.
different stories.
I know, yeah. And we don't know for
Holy
sure which
crap.
one happened.
Interesting. Okay. If and when I ever commit my crimes, I love the idea of hiding out in a convent. Like,
Yes.
I don't know why. That just speaks to me. I don't know why.
What was that movie that came out where Aubrey Plaza was a nun? And there were
I
a
don't
few other really
know.
good. Oh, it was a comedy, and it was really funny.
Yeah, I never saw it. I know what you're talking about, but I don't think I know the name.
Oh, that's gonna bug me. I'm gonna have to go on IMDb later. But yes, I could see that. I could see that specific movie as your life. Yeah.
Just like, yeah, I don't know why. I definitely don't want to be a nun, but I could see myself pretending to be a nun.
And that was totally a thing. Like, I remember learning about that, that if a woman didn't want to get married, or if she didn't want to risk abuse, or, or if she just wanted to be educated and like learn how to read, she would just become a nun. And it wasn't a religious thing. It was just a freedom thing, which I totally vibe with.
There was, that many years ago, I do not remember what this was for or why I was there, but when I was in Chicago, I went to some seminar. I don't remember what. I'll have to find my notes on it. It wasn't like for school or work or anything. I just like showed up somewhere one day. And one of the presentations that was being given was about that and how nowadays we can often associate religion with like a very kind of conservative outlook. But throughout history, becoming a nun has been considered a pretty radical thing. And it's like because of what you just said, it was an option that was not the expected, you become a wife or a mother, or if you want to be, because you were considered employed at that point. Anyway, I'm going to start rambling, but I remember thinking it was very interesting because it was kind of like a lot of women did it as a means of basically say, like, it was their only way of being able to say, fuck you,
Yeah.
Or hide out after poisoning their husbands. I don't know. Or both. I mean, I guess that's the same thing. But yeah, I just think that's a really interesting, because that's not really the association we have with like religious roles nowadays.
I think it's interesting too. I so much wish we knew what the truth was. Giulia is such an intriguing obviously she's intriguing, so I'm doing a whole episode about her. But, it's just...
And she has talked about a lot. Like, I've definitely heard her name, and I've heard this story to an extent many times. But, like, many different versions of it. Like, it does have that essence of, like, a myth or legend versus...
Totally.
But she really did exist, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, like, that's always immediately interesting.
Yeah. And the legacy is just incredible. So after she died, it wasn't like her poisoning crew fizzled out or anything like that. Girolamo took over, the one who we think might have been her daughter.
Okay.
And once that happened, everything was kind of fine for a while, but less than a decade after Giulia died, it all kind of came crashing down. So we don't quite know how the authorities found out what they were doing in Rome. Some stories say that somebody admitted it in a confessional booth, but there's a more popular story that says it was one of their customers that betrayed them. That story goes that basically there was a woman who wanted to poison her abusive husband. So she goes and gets Aqua Tofana. They're like sitting down to dinner and the poison's in his food and he goes to eat it. It's soup. Don't know why that matters. And she panics and is like, stop, don't eat it. And is like begging him to not eat it. And obviously that's suspicious as hell. And so she just kind of breaks down and tells him everything, in part because he forced her to a little bit. And he wasn't just some random guy. He like had connections. So he went to the authorities and kind of got the ball rolling on a deeper investigation that ultimately wound up uncovering the entire ring. Yeah, and it was also just bad timing as well. The Pope at the time, his name was Alexander VII. He was a particularly not fun Pope. His tenure was all about hunting down heretics, witches, anyone not falling in step with Catholic doctrine, that kind of thing. So as soon as he got word that a bunch of women were poisoning dudes, he was like, get them.
I feel like all he needed to hear was a bunch of women, and he was like, absolutely not. No. They're congregating.
Yeah. This Pope wound up using a network of spies to root out the identities of these women. And one story goes that there was essentially an equivalent of like an undercover female police officer who approached Giovanna, and she was the woman who dealt with like the lower social classes. And this undercover policewoman described being in an unhappy marriage, and so they sold her Aqua Tofana, and the gang was apprehended because they were officially caught, kind of thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There did wind up being, I know, and betrayed by a woman too.
I was going to say it. What a betrayer.
I know.
They still exist. Sorry, I did not mean to say that.
The venom with which you said it was so choice.
I just don't like, come on. Women supporting women. We don't need to be tearing each other down.
Yeah, we need to be poisoning our husbands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not us specifically.
Not us. I like my... Well, he's not
my husband, missed my wink. I'm winking at my wink.
That's a good wink. That was... Oh, okay. That's a silly wink. It was sultry at first.
Was it? I'm not looking at myself, so I'm just assuming that all of them are great.
The second one was cartoon. There we go. Yep, your face is getting bigger.
My eye just started twitching. My eyes are literally like, girl, stop. What are you doing? Anyway, continue.
Anyway, so they were apprehended and there did wind up being a trial. The trial presented evidence of 46 murders resulting from their poison, and 5 ringleaders were hanged in front of a crowd in July 1659. One of their clients.
Oh, I thought you said on July 16th. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry. That's Phil's birthday. I got excited. Yeah. Maybe it was on July 16th.
It might. Yeah. All I could find.
Did you have an exact date?
I don't have an exact date. Yeah.
So what did you say after that? Sorry, I interrupted.
One of their clients was also executed.
Oh no. Mm-hmm. Was it the one that may or may not have told her husband, or do you not know?
Not sure. Okay. Not sure. There's so many like rumors and legends about it that it's really hard to tell. There were also a few people that were involved with the trial who weren't executed. They were given life in prison. It was like a lot of their low class customers were given life in prison kind of thing. Somehow the priest that helped them, Father Girolamo, and their clients from the aristocracy all escaped punishment. And
I
in fact,
was gonna say, I was wondering what may have happened to the non-low class citizens.
one historian has even uncovered evidence that this was on the direct orders of the Pope.
Snooze.
Yeah, hypocrite.
What a shock.
Yeah.
I hate that.
And this trial is what caused Aqua Tofana, which is also called water from Palermo, if you've ever heard that before. It caused it to become kind of just a generic term for a really effective and deadly poison.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And it's also credited with not starting, but certainly reinforcing in a big way the idea that poison is a woman's weapon, which I think we've all heard that stereotype.
Yeah. There is a specific like femme fatale type vibe associated with the idea of poisoning someone. And that's probably what, I mean, I'm sure that there's many reasons for that, but just, I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole we can go down. There are, whatever, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole. This is just such an interesting topic to me.
It is really interesting. And even though Aqua Tofana kind of became a generic term for just a really effective poison, stories about the actual poison of Aqua Tofana being used didn't end with this trial. There are reports of a woman selling Aqua Tofana in Naples 50 years after that trial ended. 20 years after that, the Holy Roman Emperor's personal physician reported that he had found legal papers attributing 600 recent deaths to the use of Aqua Tofana. And in 1778, over a century after Giulia's activity, an elderly woman going by the name Tofana was taken into custody for killing hundreds of people using Aqua Tofana. One really interesting thing is that in the 1670s, there was this thing called the Affair of Poisons in France, which is a whole fucking thing that I'm not going to get into. It is fascinating, though. Highly recommend you look it up. But basically, there was this big kerfuffle in the French court where a ton of people were conspiring to poison each other, including even like conspiracies to poison King Louis XIV himself. And whispers were circulating through the court that the poison in question was Aqua Tofana. Over a century after that, when the composer Mozart came down with an intense sudden illness that eventually led to his death, he is credited as saying, and I quote, "I am sure that I have been poisoned. I cannot rid myself of this idea. Someone has given me Aqua Tofana." Fucking Mozart talked about it. Wild. And in more recent years, which I didn't actually know about this, but I thought it was interesting, the acronym MATGA has become really popular among women online, which is short for Make Aqua Tofana Great Again.
Oh my God. What? I've never heard of this.
I had never heard of that either.
Holy crap. Okay.
So I'm going to unpack that later when we're not recording.
Oh, I'm so sorry for what my search history is about to be. I was just going to ask. So, based on everything you just said, do we all agree that there is still a secret Aqua Tofana ring happening?
Yes.
Hopefully, places.
I think so.
Oh my God, that's wild. There's like a secret society, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Who do we think it is?
What if it was you this whole time and you didn't tell me?
It looks so good for my age.
But yeah,
I would tell you.
I would tell you too. I promise.
You're the brains of all of our operations. I'm just like,
oh, that's not nice to you at all.
oh, really? I don't mind it. I'm very proudly an idea guy. Phil always like gets his panties in a bunch when I say that because there's such a negative connotation with like the idea guy.
The idea guy is very important.
You have to have an idea guy, and then you have to have someone who will actually like teach you how to do the stuff and like be smart about things. That's you. I'm the one that's like chasing butterflies in my brain all the time. So if I was gonna run a secret poison ring, I would definitely need to tell you because I don't know how to make a good spreadsheet.
Oh, Giulia Tofana would have had the fucking best spreadsheets, man.
For real. Enviable.
But yeah, that's kind of all I have for you. I have a short little paragraph just to put a bow on it But
Yeah.
that's it really. So whether Giulia intended it or not, Aqua Tofana has become a symbol of women's liberation in the centuries since her death, and Giulia along with it. Its modern usage has, of course, come with some very intense criticism from the powers that be, but one thing that we can all agree on is that Giulia's legacy is complicated. To some, she's a feminist icon. To others, she's a serial killer who enabled violence. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Either way, her legend endures. The end.
That's an interesting way to end because she's a problematic figure, right?
Yes.
Like, no matter what your opinion is, there's this feeling of like, oh, I'm sorry, but,
Mm-hmm.
But I think objectively, I don't agree with the perpetuating violence or whatever it was because it sounds like a pretty non-violent way to go. Like, you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of get a tummy ache and then you die. That's not very violent.
Is ending violence with death violence? If there's abuse? It's such a, what's the fucking word? Philosophical argument.
Yeah. It's something that doesn't have an answer because it's so subjective because some people think all death is violent if it's done to someone by someone. And I mean, the word I have in my head right now is more like justice versus violence, but I wasn't there. I don't know these people. Maybe they were violent people, but I think this is the gray area that I am comfortable living in.
Yeah.
And
I
I have
think
my opinions.
at the very least, it's a snapshot into the female experience of years gone by.
I agree. And also not of years gone by, of people that still very much experience similar things.
Yeah. But
But
it is 17th century Italy is different than 2025. But yeah, I hear you.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
So welcome to
interesting.
Poison Month.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good start because this is one I think I'm going to suspect that everyone who would listen to us has heard something of this, like
It's a
on
really
the fringes,
popular story.
because I know that is like a buzz. Aqua Tofana is like a buzz word that you hear, but like you might not know the actual story behind it or what it is or who she was. Like I didn't know, like I knew parts of her story. I didn't even know her name. It's like one of those. You kind of know, but you don't know, I have so many things I want to say, but I don't want to say them on camera.
We can talk about it after the fact. Maybe let's all just take a deep breath and just go think about this by ourselves where no one can hear us.
Yeah. Or judge us on our opinions. I do want to say before we do wrap up, my one last thought that actually is a real thought and not just me like daydreaming about violence. I do love the whole cosmetic camouflage thing. I think that's
Me too.
There are so many things throughout history that are like very specific to how women kept themselves safe, I'm choosing to say it that way. And I feel like this can be considered one of them, depending on how you want to look at it. There is such an interesting history with like cosmetics in general and how they've been used throughout history. I do think that this is worth including in that history, even though it's not a cosmetic. I think it would have been significantly harder for all of them to get away with this if not for cosmetics,
Yes.
So
I would include, like, if you think about cosmetics as like an arsenal, I would include this in there.
Yeah. And I do that's on our years long list of things to talk about. So we don't have to go deeper than that. But
there are some really interesting histories, mysteries, and true crime about cosmetics.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to keep listening.
Whoopsie. Anyway, thank you for joining us for our first poison episode. Stay tuned because we have many more for you. 3 to be exact over the course of the next 3 weeks. Very looking forward to next time because I can't wait to eat this ice cream again. And I can't wait to rate this one.
I can't wait to have pretzels with mine.
Oh, yeah. So you didn't do pretzels at all with yours? You said you forgot.
I completely forgot. Yeah.
I'm going to go have another dish, sans itty bitty piece of pretzel.
Nice.
It was good. I mean, it was good. I just love this ice cream. So
I get you.
Cool. Until next time, little spoons. Keep it cool.
Keep it creepy.